Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As a lot of you might not know, I have been doing video for a couple of years now, and one of my favorite part of filmmaking has been color grading. To me, color grading is a little bit like spices. It's the little thing you add at the end of the process that takes your video to a whole new level. It's a little bit like when you go out to hunt. You go out in the bush with your bow and you're patiently waiting for a wild tofu. I'm vegetarian, so I only hunt tofu. And you spend your day in the dirt until you see that tofu. You take your shot, hit, and bring that tofu back home, grill it, do an awesome recipe with it, and then you use these spices to bring your dish from a decent dish to an amazing dish. And to me, color grading is that. It's the spices of the filmmaking world, is the finishing touch. So today I'm going to show you my personal color grading process. I just really enjoy this part of the job, and I found that when I'm applying this color grading process to the video I make, it makes it look way more professional. But before we jump in DaVinci, I just want to start by saying that what you're about to watch has been recorded yesterday. And I didn't realize that my screen recorder only recorded in HD. So I'm awfully sorry for the resolution, but I'm way too lazy to do it all over. Here we are in the color panel. So my first step here is going to be in my node. I always start with at least 5 nodes. Saturation, contrast. I don't usually use a lot, so I decided to stick with good old hand grading. My first step here is to lower the saturation. I like to lower my saturation first and make it just black and white. It's gonna help me dial in my contrast. And then here, I always try to, keep, as you can see here, keep this in check. I know that this shot, I want it to be a little bit darker. Click on contrast here, bump my contrast until you kind of see here, it wants to break. So I'm just gonna lift it a little bit like that. Give it a little bit more contrast like that, you see. Now we're expanding in kind of the field of contrast. After that, I go in my log wheel and I kind of lower it. I kind of like my black not to be too black, to kind of stay in that vicinity. The contrast looks poppy, not too much, and it's a great starting point. So let's just look at the rest. Here you can see that for this part of the shot it's going to be way overexposed. So I'm gonna go in my primaries here and just like pull it. And then we go in our saturation and reset it. As you can see, we already dialed in something that is quite good. It's still just the beginning, but you look at this image and you're like, damn, not so bad for a beginning of an image. I know that there is loss of details here, and then there it's a little bit too high. I'm gonna fine tune the contrast here. I want my mid-tone to be a little bit there. A little bit like that, go back here, see how it goes. Before, after, I kind of like it. I'm just gonna give the highlight a little bit more pop here. I meant the mid-tone here. And then push a shadow just a little bit more. And then look what it does here. The highlight, I just just a little bit too much. According to my scopes here, there is no information to be gained in this high highlight, like those ultra highlight. So what I can do to verify that, sometimes I'm just gonna go pull this to 200 ISO just so I can see if there's any information in my highlights. And you mess around and you see there is nothing to be gained because everything is flat here. When you see flat here, means that this part here is way beyond saving. Gonna reset this here back to what I was previously. Then I'm coming here and I'm gonna, give it a little bit of saturation, a little 60 here, just to give it a little bit of like, I'm quite happy with how this turns out here. This turned out, as you can see, we have a lot of details in his skin, a lot of details in the shadow, a lot of details in the highlight, and that's it. No, I'm just kidding. This is just the beginning. A lot of people would stop there, but not me and not you. Now I'm looking at this image and I know it's quite cold. He's in the shadow, he's in the shade. It's a sunset, that's the ocean here. So everything is going to be cold. Now I have a decision to make. Do I want it to be neutral? Do I want this image to be, color accurate, or do I want this image to have a mood? I personally want it to have a mood. I personally don't want it to be perfectly color balanced. I shot it this way because I knew I wanted it to be cold. If we go in the raw section here, you see like my color temperature is at 5,000 and my tint is at 0. I would maybe just my tint is at 0. I might just add a little bit of warmth. Let's see what it says here. Yeah. I like it. Then I go in this node here, the third node. This image is already kind of where I want it to be. It's already kind of cold, already kind of like you have this warmth and cold contrast. I'm gonna go for a little bit more neutral. My goal is always to have his skin look as healthy as possible. And you can see here in your scope that this is most likely his skin tone. You see here, the skin tones are about right. So now I'm gonna go back here in my parade and I'm gonna start dialing in the shadows. I want to create as much color separation as possible here. I know I want my shadows to be a little bit more blue, so I'm just gonna give it a touch of blue. Here is my midtones and give it just a little bit. Then again, I'm gonna switch between my parade and my vector scope just to make sure that my image is what I want it to be. And I want my highlight to have a little bit of warmth. So just a bit of warmth. As you can see before and after, now before we had this very blue and kind of washed out image, and now we brought it back to something a little bit more natural, but still retaining that cold aspect a little bit. And I see that I want a little bit more cold in my shade. This is a decent starter image. So here is where I'm gonna start building the look. I want the shadows here to be a little bit darker. I want it to be a little bit more crushed, but not too much. So I'm gonna, play with it a little bit. Play with my midtones, play with my highlights. It's kind of a gritty 16mm image that I have in mind for this video. So I'm going to start crushing everything. Going down and very, very slightly, I'm a big proponent of going slow, doing things slowly. I don't want to, screw everything up and be that guy who only spent 5 minutes on a grade and call it a day. So now that we've put the shadows almost to zero, almost crushed, I'm gonna go back here and lift them a little bit. And I'm gonna do the same with my highlights. I don't want them to be too white, too blocked. So this is gonna create a flatter, more film-like image. And you might ask, why did we give it some pop to then make it flat again? We did not make it flat, and it's not over yet. It's like when you paint, you use your brush, apply a little bit, wait for it to dry, apply a little bit more. This is how I approach color grading. Here, I'm gonna go in and really start coloring, like applying some subtle color in there. I want to have some warm highlights and cold shadows. So before, after, you see we're already getting somewhere, but it's still just the beginning. And then I'm gonna go in my log wheel, gonna bring the shadows back again a little bit, not too much. I still want it to be, a little bit, not too crushed. And then I realize I lifted it too much. Going back and forth a little bit here. Now we have a very dark and moody image that represent kind of the vibe that was outside. Once I did what I considered to be kind of the primer coat of my look, this is where I usually go and add a glow. I am into this effect lately. Now you're like, oh my god, now it's all super dark. I know it's all super dark, but give me a second, you'll see. Shine threshold, not zero, but almost there. And the same for the spread. I want it to spread, but not too much. I want the glow to be subtle, not too much. It's always about subtle changes, and now you see it's way too much, but we're not done yet. Here is, I'm gonna control the spread, control the shine threshold a little bit. Let's keep working on it a little bit. Let's keep working on it. As you can see here, I have a lot of glow. It creates this kind of soft image. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna play with my blend because I want it to be very subtle. I don't want it to be like straight in your face, like if I was using a cheap glow. Small incremental changes, very subtle. Don't need more than that. And if you put too much, then you're gonna it's gonna look cheesy. Just a bit, just a touch, just a lick, glow. Then we go back in our look and we're gonna lift the shadows just a little bit, just a touch, just a touch, just a touch. We want this image to be well balanced. We don't want this image to have a lot of character, but we don't want it to be overly contrasted, overly saturated, overly anything. I control my low range like that, high range, same. Just a smidge, just a smidge. And then a little bit more saturation. In my opinion, this image needs a little bit more saturation, just to bring it to life, because you have this very beautiful golden sunlight thing that is hitting him in the face. You see that this separation here, and I want to emphasize that because the rest is very dark and there's not much happening in this image. I want this golden like kick here to come alive. It's not over yet. It's not over yet. So we're gonna add another node again. And this one is for grain. This is where you dial in. So I'm coming here and I'm gonna add a lot of grain strength. I'm gonna play a little bit with texture. Like I want a lot of grain. Grain strength. I want it to be there. I want it to be like aggressive, almost too much, but not too much. So I'm going there. I'm being aggressive with grain, but now I'm slowly dialing it back because you don't want it to be too much. I feel like the grain needs a little bit more softness. You can see it here in the car. A little bit too aggressive, but we're getting there. I'm gonna reduce the grain size a little bit. I'm somewhere near what I like. I don't add grain to every single one of my videos, but this one calls for grain, so let's give it some grain. And so here I'm gonna add a node, parallel node, and I'm going to Control H and qualify his skin, because I'm gonna, you know, bring his skin to something I like, because now it's, to my opinion, a little bit off. So let's do a decent qualification job. I'm gonna be very honest with you here. It is sometimes a little bit hard to get what you want because you have a lot of pollution here. Since the skin picks up a lot of reflection, you have a lot of it. And now here, I'm gonna go in my vector scope, and as you can see, my skin tone is not that far off. So I'm just gonna denoise it, clean my black, clean my white a little bit, play with that, blur radius. I'm just gonna blur the heck out of it. And then I'm gonna qualify even more, you know, just do my job, go along and, you know, do what I was born to do. Do what I was meant to be doing all my life, which is qualifying things. You know, it's a decent job. Not most perfect, but it's gonna do for this tutorial. And then here, I am going to give the skin a little bit more warmth, just a tad more. You can see here, I want it to be close to that line. Not always, but for this one, this is what works. I'm gonna give the shadows a little bit more warmth. Here, very, very subtle. I always work with subtle movements, subtlety here in my highlights. The highlights of the skin, I want to reflect whatever is around him. So I'm going to go for a little bit more blue here. Then in the mid-tones, I'm going to inject quite a bit of red. Then I'm going to see the difference. It like I said, everything I do here is very subtle. It's layer after layer of subtle changes. And as you can see, to me, this skin looks way healthier. Might need a little bit more contrast even. You know, let's push the highlight a little bit in his skin. Just a touch, not a lot. You do what you were paid to do, which is make whatever awesome. Whatever you were supposed to make look awesome, you make it look awesome, and that's it. And this is before, after. As you can see, it affects the coat here. So what I'm gonna do power window. So here I'm only affecting his skin and a little bit of his coat. This is looking pretty good if you ask me for what we are trying to achieve, which is 16 mil look. There's a lot of grit, a lot of grain. There's like a lot of life to this image, but I'm still not fully satisfied. So I'm gonna go back here in my log. I want this part here to be gold. I want it to, and there you go. There you go. Just a little bit, just a touch. You know, it's little change by little change. To me, this image is already pretty good, but I'm gonna go a step further. We want him to be the center of attention. So I think by raising him a little, because the image is already quite dark, as you can see here, everything is like way dark, which is good because this is what we want, but we also want to have more attention on him. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna move all that just to make it more clear. And this is the glow, grain, and between my glow and my grain usually, because I want my grain to be unaffected by the vignette, the light comes from the left. So we're gonna do a gradient here like that. Increase the softness. I don't want it to be too straight in your face, but I still want it to be apparent. So let's raise this a little bit. As you can see here, it raised our shadows. Before, after, it raised our shadows a little bit too much to my taste. So I'm gonna bring the shadows back because we don't want the shadows to be raised. We want to you know, highlights. We want to have more punch, more highlights coming from there. Be careful not to burn your highlights still. You want it to be subtle. You want it to be beautiful. So ever so slightly, I think it did a pretty great job here. Maybe like that. You see a little bit more. I'm tempted to, you know, go a little bit more. Just a little bit touch. Now I'm pleased with what I see, because the right side is very dark and the left side is where I want it to be. So we have this image here, which is already looking great. It's looking like a freaking film or something. And now this is my finishing node. Usually I keep that for the last part. This is where I'm gonna dial in my final contrast. Just the slightest amount of pop. Probably gonna go here. Add some mid-tone details, just a little bit to make my noise pop a little bit. It's not a lot, it's just subtle. You're gonna have a little bit more punch here. A little bit more punch here, everywhere, and still retain that kind of faded 16 mil look. I'm gonna try and raise my lower end just ever so slightly. Raise it, lower this here a little bit, ever so slightly. Everything has to be subtle. And then I'm gonna go here. I kind of want that blue to pop a little bit, so go there, select, and just pop. Just, you know, play with it and be like, there's just right there is something I'm into that. I am into that. Then I'm gonna go here and do the same thing. I might want my blues to be a little bit more turquoise than perfectly blue. Slightly. Yeah, this is something I like here. So now I'm going to go there, track my subject here. Let's track this Now let's track that bad boy. There we go. That's a good tracking job. That's what I call a decent tracking job. And now we have a great image for a music video.
Что все окей, давай сыграем в прятки. Сказать как есть и привести к беспорядку. К чему твоя забота, если не завтра упреки?
And there you have it. This is basically how I grade every project. I'm not going to use glow and grain in every project. Obviously, I'm not lifting the shadows in every project. I'm not gonna give the same look to every project, but I personally found that this process worked very well to get almost every type of look I am called to do. So I hope this video taught you a thing or two, and I hope it inspired you to push your color grading to the next level as well. And also hope you guys stop using Premiere Pro for color grading. If you're not using DaVinci Resolve, you're living in 1835. I'm not kidding. DaVinci Resolve is that much better for color grading. I colored one of my friends' video lately in Premiere, and I was mind blown at how backward Premiere Pro is for color grading. It's crazy. It doesn't mean that you cannot achieve anything good in Premiere. It's just that it's not as intuitive, not as good as DaVinci, and that's it. On these words, I hope you're having a marvelous new year, and that 2021 is going to be a little bit less shitty than last year. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Ciao. Au revoir. Hasta luego.